Welcome to the special edition Rock&Roll. Gonna workout, train, exercise, watching Super Bowl 44. Encouraging all to work out, train, exercise. I was a bit moody, but did some meditation, gratitude, and feel much better. I conquered depression long ago. Had a few years between about early 2015, late 2014, and summer 2017 when I was depressed and suicidal. And that was a hard battle. And what got me out of depression was crossing Canada coast to coast. That event made me establish a strong esprit de corps with my fellow North Americans, always for the 10, the 50, and the 3. And watching Super Bowl 44 now. This was February 7, 2010. And I wonder where I was and what I was doing because, as you know, I have trouble remembering my life prior to late 2013, early January, February 2014. And mostly what matters is the past 11 years. I have a very good memory of the past 11 years, but before that is like a blackout. It's actually called RA, for great amnesia. Personal memories, childhood, life, and adulthood, and have a good memory of the past years. And gotta be grateful, thankful, gonna be working with these books here. Gonna serve as a workout instruments while watching Super Bowl 44. Oh, it's already on. Got some tackles already beginning, and I'm not gonna put the audio commentary because it's got some restrictions maybe because of the copyrights and all that. So I want to be able to post this video on my YouTube channel right here in this room office in Temple, Hokkaido, Montreal. Gonna salute the firefighters, the bakers, the butchers, the nurses, the truckers, the electricians, the plumbers, the grocery store clerks, 24/7. Salute the firefighters across the North American Collectif. There's number 9. What a pass for New Orleans versus Indianapolis. So the Saints versus the Colts. This was February 7, 2010. Gonna be hydrating with some of that good decaf tea. Gonna be doing a little bit of drills, turning left or right, right or left. And this year is a series of books. I believe that it's about 25 to 44 pounds. So we're gonna be working out with them, lifting them up, and gonna be maybe doing a little boxing. Thank you, my anonymous friend, for donating these great gloves in 2018. It's a Dragon versus Trump event. Have been and will continue to challenge Donald Trump to a boxing match. And ever since 2018, when Granddaddy Trump made a mistake to impose tariffs on Canadian aluminum and steel, and as I have been and will continue to call for the mass financing via the North American Collective for citizens to be mass financed fitness and regular physical activity, which has been, is, and will be my medicine and therapy of choice. Gonna stretch a little bit. Those legs, freestyle. Working out these books here, several books, auctioning all these books. Well, this is actually Rock&Roll rap songs that I wrote. And there's a book inside, German book inside, about learning some of that German. I know some German somehow, but I'm a polyglot. Like I said, I have trouble remembering my life. Personal memories, though, because mathematical skills and linguistic skills are not the same as memory, personal memory, but I have a very good memory, but keeping in mind that it's 2026, so January, February 2026, 2014, that's 12 years ago, and this was 16 years ago. Oh, number 44, what a catch. What a catch. You gotta see that one. And this is Super Bowl 44, number 44, gotta look at that. Look at that, number 44. Pow! Isn't that something? I gotta see that again. That is quite something. Look at that. Number 44, Super Bowl 44. This one. That deserves another one. Look at that. And then he goes down, but let's see. Look at that. Number 44. Shh, that's an athlete. Super Bowl 44, number 44. He caught it inside the hands, and that was quite a play for the Indianapolis Colts. And I wonder if I was where I was watching the Super Bowl. Maybe I was watching it somewhere, but I have trouble remembering my life. It's like blackouts and flashes before 2014, January, February, late 2013. And I guess I'm gonna keep updating because I have to go retrieve some archives from the Jewish General Hospital where I went years and years and years ago. I survived a vicious surprise attack. I was hit in the head a few times and hit my head on the concrete. I was bloodied up, all bloodied up, and had a dislocated right arm, right shoulder. My right arm was dislocated, and I went to the Jewish General Hospital where they cracked it back. They placed it back, and I was put like in a cast. And I was given some medications, prescription medications, and I'm curious what that medication was. So I went to retrieve the archives, but they closed early. They had closed the office, and so I have to go before 3 o'clock because their office hours are between 9 and 3 p.m. So I went. It was about 3:45, so already like 44, almost 45 minutes past the closing time that I went a few weeks ago, and I didn't want to go last week because it was the emergency rooms in the hospital here is in Montreal, Quebec. They were they were way over capacity, and so I decided not to overburden the system myself. And I no longer am depressed, suicidal. It's regular physical exercise and gratitude. But I was a bit moody. I was craving a little bit of a good massage therapy session. But I'm always open for friends with benefits because I don't will to waste anybody's time. Life is short. I in February, mid-February to mid-March this year, I'm going to be celebrating 6 years since I died of COVID right here in this room off Temple. And I moved here in summer 2015. I really had nothing. Huh? When I moved here, I had nothing, and I'm still a piece of dust, no body. I am an androgynous pansexual Aspiesque artist, athlete, philosopher, geopolitical theoretical analyst, and theorist, and all the work that I've done, especially in geopolitics, has been conclusive. And of course, in 2019, I had predicted that there's going to be an international conflagration, as I have predicted it. So, as you can see now, the events in the geopolitical world are unfolding as I have predicted and as I had predicted back in 2019. I have proof for what I just said because, of course, I have ah, I have the videos, and I consequently I made a series of workouts, training programs that I myself created. A efficient, effective workout training program system back in 2019 in October, of which I have performed more than 372 sessions thereof. And that was, of course, the program system which I created back then. And I have performed successfully more than 372 sessions of that same creative workout training program that I created back in October 2019. So that's when I predicted that there will be an international conflagration, aka World War III, and for much of the world that we're seeing now, it is unfolding as I have predicted it back then. That's a good chair that I have here, auctioning this chair for $1 billion to give my anonymous friend half, 50%, $1 million, $1 billion, $1 trillion. And I moved here with nothing really, I had really nothing, when I moved here. It was really in 2015 summer, So I moved here with, the high school diploma, I guess the high school diploma, which I do have. The high school diploma, that's basically, I guess, the what I do have. And I don't even know if I know for sure the code. I got it 11 years ago, just before I moved, like in November. Somebody donated a code which has 5 stars and has 5 buttons, and it has that, the the grains, those like the wreath that's used in several of our government institutions or armed forces or police forces, the olive branches, on it, which I still wear it. I think that's pretty much the only thing I have from all the other things I kind of gave away. And I think the copies, at least copies of my birth certificate, I think years and years ago, by mistake, about 7, 8 years, maybe 9 years ago, I had placed them in books because I used to go to the libraries often, and they're probably copies of my birth certificate, or the copy of my birth certificate, that is in a book somewhere in the Bibliothèque et Archives Nationales, in one of the libraries throughout the island of Montreal, somewhere possibly most likely in the Bibliothèque et Archives Nationales. But since between 2015 and 2020, I've rented hundreds, if not thousands, of books to go over my archives from those 5 years. From 2015 to 2020 is probably going to be more than 2 3 thousand books, hundreds of books. And I'm going to go through each and every one to try to find my birth certificate copy. The copy of my birth certificate probably is going to be there somewhere. Stuff like that, it's but I'm pretty happy, joyous. It's just sometimes I still get moody. I'm always open for friends with benefits, and friends with benefits will be a nice addition 2026, or pledge your legions. Support the dream, my dream for the public-private partnership with a North American collective based on my Trinity of theories. Of course, the CIT, Citizen Integration Theory, the DRT, Debt Fusion Theory, and the DFT, the Democratic Fusion Theory. Of course, gotta salute the truckers, the nurses. I said to myself, why am I moody? There's a nurses across North America, both Canada and United States. It's always 24/7 for the 10, the 50, and the 3 who just finished a 12-hour shift, and they need a massage or therapy, and they need some loving. So I'm going to send some loving to the nurses, the firefighters, the plumbers, those doing the deliveries for the food of service, the bakers, the butchers. And I got some bread and I got some food. I got some of that good food that I'm going to eat, and some bread and some milk. So gotta get a bit that gratitude. My rent's paid, the electricity bill's paid, got food, got coffee, got Netflix. So paid my phone bill until the end of the month, because for February I'm gonna have to pay it again. And got some appointments. I sent some emails. Got to do follow-ups on some jobs that I'm always open for business. But because of my neurological mental divergent condition known as Asperger's, autism, HFA, it has been more difficult to maintain long-term employment and long-term friendships has been more difficult, because I'm part of a neurodivergent community, also known as HFA, high functioning autism, is the same as Asperger's, right? So it's one and the same, because they merged around 2013, 2014. So when I say that I'm an Aspie, that I have Asperger's, is basically the same as HFA, high functioning autism. And it took me years and years and years to accept it, my neurodivergent that is, until about 2023, autumn 2023. So since about 2015, I've been told by several individuals who have experience in the healthcare system and have experience in working with citizens and fellow autistics and fellow Aspies like myself. And I didn't want to accept it. I didn't want to wear the label, although, it's not a mental illness. It's not a disease. It's just a neurodivergence. It makes us process information differently, and we have certain characteristics which are odd, strange, and bizarre and weird. It's of a more social nature. That's why I have to recommend always the book called Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome. Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome is a book which I officially vouch as my number one until now book as it relates to Asperger's. And also I gotta recommend Teaching Asperger's Students Social Skills Through Acting. All their world is a stage. This is a secondary book. First and foremost, I have to recommend Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome. That book I have to recommend fully and strongly so, because it has helped me to be able to build bridges, because we have to build bridges between us, neurodivergents, which we are less than 1% of the population. We're a tiny minority. In North America, Canada, United States, we're less than 1%. And so whenever I mention that I have Asperger's, and to let people know, my difference and my divergence and my communication styles, or certain mannerisms, certain characteristics which I have, are due to this neurological mental divergent condition, which is not a mental illness, nor is it as a disease. But yes, as I put it always in parentheses, there is a double D, disorder and disability, but that parenthesis is absolutely canceled by the double SS, by the special skills which we possess, especially in our special interest, also known as obsessive interest, which can preoccupy our whole daily routine. As myself, for years and years and years and years, in a ritual-like routine manner, it's 24/7 geopolitics, sports, and fitness. And as an artist, of course, who creates rock and roll songs and writes ideas for movies, for theater, for movies, for dialogue, for scripts, and for all the things of such genres, of course, as artistic work that I've done for the past years, especially in writing rock and roll songs. And it's rock and roll 24/7. It's sports and fitness 24/7, and it's geopolitics 24/7. I study the analysis of geopolitics, and it's has been it has been problematic. The problems with Aspies, people like myself, is that we have a very high unemployment level. So it stands at more than 80%. That's very monstrous. Think about that. And just last week, Canadian information about the economy, economic information as relates to employment statistics in Canada came, and it said that it had increased by 44.5% or something similar to that, almost like not a full percentage point, but like around half a percentage point. Unemployment has increased, which is unfortunate that unemployment has increased, of course, but it's close to 7% now from like 6 point something. So let's say round it up to 7%, but contrast the 7% unemployment for the neurotypical population, of which you constitute. You neurotypicals are the vast majority, the 99% with which we have to build bridges, whether small bridges, medium-sized bridges, large bridges, or extra large bridges. Contrast that to 80%. So that's 11 times higher. So for every one of you who's unemployed, there's 11 Aspies. But paradoxically, we are a tiny minority because there's not a lot of us. There's not a lot of Aspies. It's less than 1%. Officially, the diagnosed population is around 0.44% in North America. So the actual population is around 0.88, 0.9%, less than 1%. Not a lot of people know. Even the majority of the population, the majority of people that I speak would have no idea what Asperger's is, really, or HFA, which is one and the same thing. And I have to sometimes discuss it a bit to fully understand and comprehend this neurodivergence. There's number 31. What? Left and right got some yards on they. Got some yards. Indianapolis is 3-0 now. It's first. It's 5 minutes left. 4:58. The clock is running down, and you see Peyton Manning. He's got that number 18. He's got that rock and roll. Try to get a little bit of rock and roll to get drilling in some yards and get some touchdowns. And of course, how I look at football might be again from an Aspiesque position, from a little bit of mathematical calculations of the velocity of where the trajectory, whether it's of course the trajectory of the ball, if it goes in a more straight line, if it goes in a rotation or in angles. You got angles, you got mathematics, you got yards gained, yards lost. There's a lot of math in gridiron, and dancing is my favorite sport. As you love to dance, Adrian Hanna Dragon. Dancing is my favorite sport. Rock and roll it, androgynous pansexual artist, and wrote rock and roll songs. I write rock and roll songs every day, do that choreography every day, and do geopolitical analysis and development of theories, protocols, and initiatives fundamentally for the North American collective, or what I call the North American civilizational complex, of which we constitute. Canada, United States, a North American civilizational that works the upper body there. We constitute, and you got 6 yards to the left, 6 yards down the middle, 6 plus 6 plus 6, do the math, that's 18 yards. That's how we get the first down, and you drive it in for a drive for scoring that 6 points, and then you shoot, and you get 7 points, win the drive. Number 18 passes it for, he got some yards, hard to take down. Number 29, surname Ayue. That's got some yards, eh? Sometimes you just got to run the ball instead of passing the ball, So football is strategy, time management, defense, physicality, of course. Got to gain those yards to go all the way for the touchdown. Number 18 is almost sacked, but he had to get rid of it. He had to get rid of it in that one. So number 18, this is what I'm watching. Super Bowl 44. It's not one of my top favorites, but sometimes I watch over and over the same Super Bowls, eh? Usually Super Bowl 47, and sometimes I watch it 3 times every year or even more. Super Bowl 47 is one of my top 5, although my 49ers lost. It's also known as the Blackout Bowl, Hardball Bowl, Bro Bowl, Hardball Bowl, Blackout Bowl. It has several nicknames, Super Bowl 47, Hardball Bowl, Blackout Bowl, Bro Bowl. That's one of my favorites, actually, and I love the Super Bowl. And and I remember, I have flashes of my memory of Blackout before 2014, January, February, but I remember I was when Michael Sam, I was excited Michael Sam was going to play, because I'm part of, for as long as I can remember, I can remember I'm in the open, I'm not in the closet. And I remember Michael Sam when got drafted in 2014. 2014 he got drafted, and he didn't play. They didn't let him play, I guess. Didn't call him the seed, but there's many who are. Right? Interesting enough, there's not one in the NFL, NHL, NBA, MLB who is officially out of the closet, but there are many in the closet for sure. But I guess, economic pressures and all that. But I have myself for as long as I can remember. I'm out of the closet, and I even have a rock and roll rap song, and that is dated from like February 2013 because I have the copies, but I don't remember writing it. But it's like LGBTQ theme mixing something like the lyrics go something's like this. Gotta play that homo, black and white and rainbow, like the legions do it like Julius Caesar. I play black and white and rainbow, proud to be that homo. I do it like Julius Caesar, black and white and rainbow. I'm proud to be a homo. You know, but I'm pansexual actually. Man or woman, black or white, you gotta be 18 plus though, eh? You gotta be 18 plus for that play. You have to be 18 plus for that play. There's 18 plus, black or white or rainbow, but 18 plus is the requirement. Although the consent age here in Montreal, Quebec is 16, I'm still gonna 18 plus it. So you gotta be born before January 18, 2008, because 2026 minus 2008, do the math, that's 18. So since it's 19th of January, you have to be born before or on 18th of January, right? Because we got different time zones and the days count. So, so you have to be 18 in a few hours, you know. What hour were you born? 18 in a day, I guess. Gotta be, you know, sexual health is important, you know. I'm not frustrated. If I would be, I would discuss it, I guess. Maybe in the past I discussed it, you know, in the past years on my, if I check my old YouTube videos, maybe I discussed a little bit of these frustrations because, you know, I have plenty of scars and scars on that body. I'm not, you know, perfect. I don't make pretense that I am, you know, and I'm still wrestling with the dragon, you know. He says, hey, you still gotta get that blood wrestled out, and he showed me some things in the mirror that I didn't like about myself over the past years. And you know, the motto of the dragon army is nobody is born a dragon, you become one. Some of my dragons are black, some of my dragons are white, some of my dragons are rainbow. Nobody is born a dragon, you become one. And that dragon drills me, and I gotta salute General Dragon to give me the nickname and the cosign, call sign. General Clit Dig Dicklit, Rainbow Dragon 24/7 for the firefighters, butchers, bakers, nurses, doctors, electricians, the plumbers, the butchers on the road, the construction workers, the workers at Hydro-Quebec, you know, those who pick up. So we got a lot of work to do, potholes to fix, we got bridges to rebuild, we got highways to rebuild, we got a mass finance fitness, we got to go coast to coast, ocean to ocean, implement my holy trinity of theories, and get the rehabilitation for the brothers and sisters, of course, who need and who have the volition and the will to be rehabilitated, of course. And I gotta rehabilitate a little bit of that hydration with the tea. It's tea, so we're gonna get a little bit of that. I'm gonna hydrate. It's hot. HOT hot. He caught it, number 85 for the touchdown. Wow. What a pass. And what a catch also. Cheerleaders, rock and roll. Priestess of the goddess, Hana Hana Hana. Always cheerleading the coming of our Imperial Republic. Always cheerleading the Dragon Army, the Imperial Integrated SSD Legion Security Service and Defense, which for years and years and years I have been and will continue to call for its formation for the North American Collective, always for the 10, the 50, and the 3. And Granddaddy Trump is now 1. I guess we're going to have to make a deal for 11 or preferably 13, just like the original 13. My way to fuse Canada and the United States into the Imperial Republican complex of the public-private partnership best at this point in time, you know. Please triple the cheerleader salaries and finance some women's sports. To be honest, if I would be able to afford to get the tickets now, although I'm rich, affluent in kisses, marching steps, lots of rock and roll, I'll be able to. Oh, the book's got a little bit of that go. Got some Latin, got some Asperger's syndrome, some autism evolution, and got some books here, you know, on the dynamics, and that's just what they slid off a bit. Some of that rock and roll for that. We gotta put them back and let's see what slid off there. So we gotta get on that go. These are the ones here. There we go. We got some books. So yeah, it's. Like I said, I'm gonna improvise to see how it is to work with these books there, because I was cleaning a bit. Still got a lot of cleaning to do. And full February moon, and before the Super Bowl, and on the blood moon on that coming in March. And for if I would be able to afford, I would actually buy a Victoire PVHL Professional Women's Hockey League local season when they play in Montreal. I would try to get all the tickets. I'll try to get them all. If they when they play in Montreal, I will try to get all the tickets when they play in Montreal. The Victoire Professional Women's Hockey League, which I'm glad that they expanded, added from 6 to 8. And I got the dream for the Dancing Goddess Army, because dancing is my favorite sport. Rock and roll for the DZ. Dancing is a sport, and get that priestess of the goddess. God bless. Goddess kiss. It's always God bless, goddess kiss. Coming of our Imperial Republic, and we gotta get the Imperial Integrated Dance League, the Imperial Integrated Dance League, aka the Dancing Goddess Army. For yours truly, priestess of the goddess, got those trillions of kisses. Keep my name out of your mouth if it's not for blessing, otherwise let it be turned in pestilence. For the firefighters, the truckers, the bakers, the butchers, the nurses, the grocery store clerks, the plumbers, electricians, the welders, putting those dancing steps for those who build the highways, the daycare workers changing diapers always 24/7. Gotta get it for the left and the right, and gotta get it for the drills, and those, of course, who get it on the left and the side, and to be, of course, concomitant to everything that's going on in the North American Collective and beyond. As from parallel to the discussions when the discussions go into the geopolitical arena, that's my special interest. That's where, of course, I spend most of my hours a day, parallel to working out, training, and fitness. But suffice it to say that I predicted what's happening now, and now I got to do a strong meditation on Uncle Connie's trip to China and Qatar and the deal signed. I have a big philosophical, intellectual, academic discussion revolving that specific geopolitical reality, that specific. I have to analyze more in concordance and more profoundly the deal signed, but overall, of course, when we're going to move towards having and establishing a foreign policies after we fuse Canada, United States, my way into the Imperial 63 complex, and get rid of the border, do a great census, implement my DRT theory, the debt refusion theory for the creation of the universal exchange unit, the UE, and fuse the central banks into the Imperial Central Bank and the FBI and the RCMP, and the FBI. The RCMP basically is like the FBI here in Canada, into the IPS, Imperial Police Service, and do a census, accord some amnesty and mass finance fitness as a mass public private partnership in concordance to all the appellations where we are now, of course. And we got a lot of work to do, and our brothers and sisters also who lost their liberty. We have to rehabilitate as much as we can and rebuild the ghettos. Rebuild the North American inner urban cities together in the concomitant that we're going to rebuild, and build the four. Now that I discussed building the four on the Canadian-US border, support the dream of building the biggest ever sports arena coliseum ever built, to be 11 times bigger than the Caesar Superdome is in New Orleans. That's where Super Bowl 47 was played, fought, battled out, and many other Super Bowls with it. Before that, it was used to be known as the Mercedes-Benz, and before that, the Louisiana Dome. So it changed names, just like I changed my name officially, still to pay that paper, to put it on paper. But Adrian Hanna Dragon died right here in this room off Sun Temple in 2020, and I guess many times. And I used to live in a very moldy place. But back to the building, which we will construct together on the Canadian-US border to inaugurate a new era of fusion, the American Canadian Imperium of the 63. Not one, even one could go, but preferably 13, best maybe 11, because the three Northwest Territories, Nunavut and Yukon, may be fused into one state, and then the 10 provinces in each state, each 11 in the super states, super integrated states, as we can commit into a new constitutions, which we're going to formulate in perpetual for the 21st century, total BDD, benevolent dominance and dominion, based on my Trinity theories, which will involve also building and constructing the biggest ever structure arena ever built on the Canadian-US border for 24/7 sports and fitness, the Imperial People's Coliseum. We're going to get it on the go, and that's what we're going to have to do in concomitant, where we're going to get, of course, to build and construct that super building, superstructure, where we're going to have super events, and of course the first inauguration event. The inauguration event is going to be me fighting Donald Trump, Dragon versus Trump, in a sportsmanship like boxing match. I got these gloves gifted from 2018 from my anonymous friend, of course. If I make a million, gonna give half. Gifted me these in about, I think, October 20th, 22nd, 23rd, 2018. So it's been 7 years that I have them, and I value them a lot. Gonna auction them for a million. Give her 50% half. And in 2018, in spring 2018, that's when I kind of got into politics. When Donald Trump, of course, decided to impose tariffs on Canadian aluminum and steel. That was Granddaddy Trump. He did a mistake, geopolitical mistake, and I'm not a Trump supporter. I would have voted for Biden Kamala. I'm a Democratic Republican, Universal Revolutionary Centrist. My third party for the fusion of Canada, United States, primarily mission to fuse Canada, United States into the Imperial Republican Democratic Complex, a universal revolutionary centrist party based on my trinity of theories: the CIT citizen integration theory, the DRT debt fusion theory, and the DFT democratic fusion theory for the plateau of the universal coast-to-coast rehabilitation, rejuvenation of the North American collective, as we are an emergent civilizational complex, and will entail, of course, the building thereof of the biggest ever sports arena coliseum ever built, which is going to be on the Canadian-US border, and will enable us to have mass sports events. This is going to be 11 times bigger than the Caesar Superdome. Like I said beforehand, the Caesar Superdome in New Orleans hosted several Super Bowls. One of my favorite Super Bowls is of all time, top 5 of all time Super Bowls, is Super Bowl 47, which has several nicknames, where my 49ers lost to the Ravens by 3 points. Blackout Ball, Hardball Ball, Bro Ball. I watch it every year a few times, actually. I don't remember if I watched it or where did I watch it. It was in 2013 February, but you know, I watch it every year for like the past 11 years. I watch it several times a year. Several Super Bowls I watch over and over. And several Super Bowls I watch over and over. Most of them that my 49ers faithful win, but we're gonna win the 61st, 62nd, 63rd. Go Purdy, go Purdy. We Empire Strikes Back with Purdy, so I'm confident that we're going to win Super Bowl 61, 62, 63. Say 3 in a row for the Niners. 3 in a row for the Niners. 3 in a row for the Niners. Give some charity, NFL, NHL, NBA, MLB, and support this mass public-private partnership for the building, of course, of the North American Imperial People's Coliseum, the Imperium Coliseum, on the Canadian-US border, which is going to be 11 times bigger than what we have now. The Caesar Superdome in New Orleans is going to be 11 times the mass size of that. The biggest ever sports coliseum ever built on the Canadian-US border, of mass workers to build it. And parallel to the Imperial People's Coliseum, we're going to build the Forgotten Goddess Temple. Not that she needs it, because I'm a piece of dust, and she's got the pyramids, those tombs and temples where the goddess lies and dances with her brother the sun. But in the North American, in our empire, we're going to build the Forgotten Goddess GeoDDSS temple to be 11 times bigger than the St. Joseph's Oratory. Here we have a structure, the St. Joseph's Oratory, where we have, of course, the St. Joseph's Oratory, which is a mass structure. And 11 times that structure, known as St. Joseph's Oratory, is going to be the Forgotten Goddess temple. In parallel, we're going to build the House of the Dragon. House of the Dragon. House of the Dragon. We're gonna build it, of course, the House of the Dragon, and that was gonna be, of course, the building where we're gonna have to be building the House of the Dragons. Crimson, scarlet, crimson are shades of red, red, scarlet, and crimson. Gonna build the House of the Dragon, where I can have open houses. Here I can't have anybody hosted over here because it's too small, but I gotta be grateful where I used to live. I used to live in a very moldy place. Like I said, my memories like blackout and flashes. I have trouble remembering my life back to 2014. January, February 2014, late 2013. Maybe I was a junkie. Maybe who knows? Maybe the mold, MOLD. There was lots of mold there. It was a small place. I didn't even have a bathtub. There was no bathtub. I am glad I have a bathtub now. And this small place was like small. Of course, there was no bathtub, but that consequently what we have now to be. There was no bathtub, and there was a small place. I didn't have a bathtub. It was moldy. I didn't even have a proper kitchen. The kitchen, of course, was inside my room. So that was a small moldy place, and that's what we're gonna have to be doing and building the House of the Dragon. And Rainbow People's Coliseum or the Rainbow People's Palace for my fellow neurodivergent community, fellow neurodivergents and fellow people who are LGBTQ. And of course, there's a growing number of people who come out of the closet. And, I can't remember Michael Sam in 2014. I think it was drafted. It was like April 2014. But I remember afterwards it was in the season when he was supposed to start like in September, but he didn't start. And I even wrote a rock and roll song. Michael Sam, Gridiron, get it with the dragon. Michael Sam, Gridiron, get it with the dragon. Michael Sam, Gridiron, get it with the rainbow dragon. Yeah, I have LGBTQ themed songs dating. Well, I have many songs, but that I remember writing, but my memory before 2014, which is a long time ago. January, February 2014 is already 12 years ago. So I have a very good memory of the past 11 years and a half. But thank God is that memory, like personal memory, like childhood, adolescence, and adulthood, early adulthood, is not stored in the same way as mathematical skills or linguistic skills, right? They're not stored in the same. So you can have personal loss of memory, but still retain skills such as mathematics skills, computer skills, linguistic skills, language skills. I'm a polyglot. I speak French and English and some Spanish and learn some other languages. Let's go with that. But what matters is mostly the past years, my work, and today and for tomorrow. I guess I died many times here, and I died during COVID. That was February, of course, 2020. February 2020. Right here in this between February 2020 and mid-March, I died right here in this room of St. Temple, and that's what it is when I die here in this. It's going to be celebrating 6 years of surviving COVID. I survived that vicious surprise attack years and years ago, and I was bloodied up. I was hit in the head a few times and hit my head on the concrete and went to the Jewish General Hospital. I still have to, I'm going to keep updating, I guess, when I retrieve the records. When was it that I went to the emergency? Because I went to the Jewish General Hospital emergency office, and at the emergency office, they had cracked back my right arm, put it in they put it in a like a cast, protective cast, regeneration cast, and I was given some meds. I'm really curious what was the medication, I'm really, really curious what were those meds. That was prescription medication, and when did I go? So in the coming days, weeks, I gave myself a new deadline before Super Bowl 60, which is February. So it's like 22 days from now. So next week, I'm probably going to go Tuesday next week. I wrote it in the agenda. I have to double check, but yeah, I wrote it there. I wrote it to go to the archives to retrieve it, and to write another email to do a follow-up, because I'm really curious, when did I go to the emergency office, the emergency department. So I survived, I guess, and I did some good deeds, and my karma, I guess, got good on that good note, because in 2016 I repeat this incident in my life, an event in my life, when in 2016 I did what I call the Independent Citizen Security Intervention, ICSI, Independent Citizen Security Intervention. I developed philosophies and theories which are such as the new 911 Dragon Integrated 911 Total Security Service and Defense Protocols for the reformulation of the security services and the police. And of course, basically the formulation thereafter is, of course, the appellatives, the initiative. Actually, it was an action and an intervention that I did in 2016. I get goosebumps whenever I discuss it, see? In 2016, I found here in a freely distributed newspaper, I found Islamic State propaganda calling, their modus operandi right here. To this moment, I don't know how come it was published, how come it got past the editors, because back then they were terrorizing the world, and for 7 years we haven't heard about them, and now they're back on the radar. In the past 3.5 months, they've been back on the radar with several terrorist activities which they did. And of course, back in 2016, my intervention, I'm pretty sure that it prevented a mass casualty event by my engagement to do what I call technically, philosophically, the Independent Citizen Security Intervention. So the Independent Citizen Security Intervention is formulated as for different citizens when it's a matter of Well, it's by national security because it's always taken in consideration NORAD and further extending it to NATO. But first and foremost, NORAD, Canada, United States, always binationally, is like the NHL, right? It's not really national, it's binational. So my theories mostly are for the North American Collective, Canada, United States joint. That's why we need to fuse best, in my way, protocols best necessary to create the N.A.C.W.P, North American Collective Workers' Party, the Universal Revolutionary Centrist Public-Private Partnership, Phoenix People's Party, is the same as the N.A.C.W.P, the North American Collective Workers' Party, to fuse Canada, United States into the Imperial Republican complex thereof. So back to what I was saying, of course, the formulation thereof, where we have to, that I recall in 2016 when I discovered here a freely distributed newspaper in Montreal. In Montreal, of course, I discovered that freely distributed. Inside the freely distributed newspaper, there was an article which was basically propaganda on behalf of the Islamic State, which at that point in time they had declared themselves a caliphate, and of course they were striking terror in the hearts of many across the world with their actions and propaganda and videos of gruesome videos and attacks. And of course, they declared themselves a caliphate in late June 2014. They were unrecognized after they conquered swaths of Iraq. They were unrecognized, and Obama, of course, had declared the intervention on 9/11 2014, where many nation states had went attacked ISIL or Islamic State because of their terrorist attack, and they were threatening the whole world to establish the worldwide caliphate. Their stated goal is, of course, to establish a worldwide caliphate based on their interpretation of Islam and the hadiths, right? Because there's different hadiths, and just like in different religions, there's different interpretations of scripture and of the prophetic revelations. So in 2016, I did the Independent Citizen Security Initiative. I went right away when I discovered the article there. I got goosebumps when I discussed it. I got horrified. I said, how come it got published past the editor? Past the editor. Still to this day, I don't know how it got published even, and how come our police services, and RCMP and CSIS, Canadian Security Intelligence Service, the CSIS are the co-equivalent of the CIA, missed it. How come the CSIS missed it? The CSIS is basically co-equivalent to the CIA here in Canada, Canadian Security Intelligence Service, and how come they missed it, and how come it got past the editor? It was a propaganda on behalf of the Islamic State, calling on citizens to pledge allegiance to the Islamic State Caliphate and starting attacking us. So for sure I prevented a mass casualty event, because if we would have stayed, continued to be published, then people would have more than for sure, they would have pledged allegiance to the Islamic State, and they would have committed atrocities here in Montreal, Canada, and to all North America. So right away, when I found the article, I didn't even hesitate. I marched right to the RCMP headquarters. That was 2016, and I made a citizen report, and I gave copies, because I took 3 copies of the newspaper, and I gave copies, and I made a citizen report as in relation to the Islamic State propaganda, which I found in the article. And days, weeks, and months afterwards, I did not see the newspaper published again. So I didn't see the newspaper being published again after that. So as it was closed down and the license revoked, and there was an investigation, because it was a specific individual who had published that article, propaganda piece on behalf of the Islamic State. So I get goosebumps so my karma, I guess, got good by saving, because potentially I saved hundreds of people, maybe hundreds, maybe tens for sure. I prevented a terrorist attack. I prevented terrorism in Canada. My actions prevented terrorism in Canada. I have no doubt about that. That my actions as what I call the independent citizen security intervention or action, independent citizen security. It's either intervention or action, but basically it's the same thing. But you could use action or intervention, but the I for independent, C for citizen, security, S, intervention, ICSI, which in our Imperium we're going to have to protocolize and encourage citizens to do so when it comes in regard to saving lives, right? Because we're going to establish the Imperial Police Service by merging the RCMP and the FBI. That's part of my dream, the consequently merging, of course, getting rid of the border and fusing, but we're also going to have to make the mass public-private partnership in order to rebuild the ghettos and rebuild the North American inner urban cities and mass finance fitness We have to mass finance fitness via mass public-private partnership, which we're going to establish, and calling on our brother citizen Bill Gates, because for mental health, for body health, regular fitness, if it's incentivized financially, let's say credit some UEs, which we're going to create the imperial dollar, aka the UE. If people march and we have the 5G and the 3G and the flock safety and Palantir and of course Microsoft and all corporations and organizations, we can establish the imperial citizens walk, where citizens for walking an hour are going to be credited, let's say 25 UEs, and they be able to buy some food. So that's for health and for doing some action by the environment, and make sure by the DGA, by the Dancing Goddess Army, that citizens of course do the proper recycling and the proper garbage, because we're going to have to do it proper recycling and proper garbage, because I noticed often in the garbages just put items that should go in the recycling instead of the garbage, and vice versa. So we have to be on the ground, and we have to be work together into the Imperial Republic to do action as individual actions for the environment and for the environment. It takes individual action, and I do it. I've been doing it for years, and myself, I use public transit. But if I would get a car, I will probably not use it much, but I want a 1963 Cadillac. Cadillac is my favorite car. Maybe put an electric engine, get Elon Musk, put an electric engine on a 1963 Cadillac with an electric 2026 engine. How about that? 2026 engine. But here I gotta give a shout out. Here in Hydro-Quebec, here in Montreal, I'm doing this video and I'm watching this Super Bowl 44 with clean, zero pollution, zero emission energy. It does not pollute at all. Gotta give a shout out to Hydro-Quebec. We're gonna need to build more dams. Our electricity here in Montreal, Quebec, and goes to five or six states in the US, all the way 1/5, 20% of our electricity goes to the island. Manhattan Island, to Manhattan Island, It goes to Manhattan Island, so all our electricity goes there to Manhattan Island. So that is, of course, just the consequential appellation, what we're going to have to do now. And to be mindful that this electricity, which goes all the way to the United States, to 6 states, I believe, 5 for sure, maybe even 6, but all the way to the island, Manhattan Island in New York, which about 1/5, which is the co-equivalent in percentage to about 20% of the electricity, is clean, zero pollution, zero emission, comes from the Hydro-Quebec plants, which are hydroelectric here, which are hydroelectric dams, and which do not pollute at all. So they do not pollute, but they have the I have to go to Bay James. I want to go to Bay James, and I have written protocols in many years, blah, 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 blah. In many years, I have written many protocols, of course, for the mass financing of fitness and tourism, which I continue to do so. And, of course, visiting such dams will be great for establishing a strong esprit de corps to safeguard everything that we have as an individual and the collective across the empire. We're going to have, of course, the dragon corporations, which are going to be public-private partnership, and public and the private. We're going to make a consortium of a mass influence and fusion of Canada and United States in the mass public-private partnership way, and mass financing fitness, mass financing regular tourism. For example, to go see the hydroelectric dams, I want to go see the Bay James hydroelectric power. The Bay James is where majestic hydroelectric dams are situated and located, and of course I do will and have the will and the volition to go visit them, because they power everything that we have, the 5G networks and the 4G networks, and our smartphones when we plug them in here in Montreal and across many states in the United States, but close to Quebec, of course, Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, New York, New Jersey. Come all this electricity here that I'm using, that I'm watching this video on, and that I take my bath with, that I heat my food with, all the electricity comes from clean, zero pollution, zero emission energy. So I got to give a shout out to Hydro Quebec. Is something that I take great pride as a Quebecer, and here we made what I call the great linguistic compromise of the French language. We got 63 dams, interesting, prophetically so, just like the 63, because Canada were 13 political entities, 10 provinces, and 3 territories. We got Quebec here, Ontario, we got New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, Labrador, Newfoundland, Manitoba, going out west, that way, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, British Columbia, and up north we got, of course, the Yukon, Northwest Territories, and then Nunavut, coming towards the east, then, of course, Northwest Territories in the middle, and Yukon, right to the extreme west of Canada, right? So those 3 and 10, that's 13. we can make those three into one state and the 10 others into 10, and that's 11, but preferably 13 plus 50, that would be 63, just like the original 13. Because imagine Uncle Connie pledged allegiance to the King of England. Do you know that Uncle Connie and his predecessors before pledged Uncle Connie, when he took reins after Trudeau in March 2025, about 10 months ago, he pledged allegiance to the King of England and his heirs. Listen to that. Instead of the Constitution of Canadian citizens, Mark Carney pledged allegiance, our Prime Minister, to the King of England and his heirs. See, I got Canada tatted up there. See, I always got the flag. You can see it for yourself. Supposedly, I got this maple leaf with Canada there. Supposedly, I got it tattooed in 2003 when I graduated high school, so more than 22 years ago. But most of my life that I have as memories before January, February 2014, late 2013, because I have the memory blackout, officially it's called retrograde amnesia, but it comes from journals which I kept. I kept journals. So yeah, I lived there in a moldy place here on the island of Montreal. I graduated high school on the South Shore, so that would be something which I said I gotta do work with, and I gotta have to get the protocols with and all the directives where we are to be involved for today and for tomorrow, 19th of January 2025. And before this workout I was a bit moody, but I feel much better now once you get that sweat. And with Asperger's it hasn't been easy. It's just like for Aspies like myself, the unemployment stands at 80%. 80, that's 4 out of 5 Aspies. And keep in mind, it's not an illness, it's not a disease, we're just different, and our difference, of course, sometimes has us encounter these troubles and problems, and we have the problems which we have now, of course, which we have in the consequential appellation where we got to be, but of course all those domains where we are now. But of course it is not an impediment to build bridges, small bridges, medium-sized bridges, large bridges, extra large bridges, small, medium, large, extra large. I give those 4 categories in sizes, just like when you order pizza, fries, or you might order a pizza that's extra large if you have a family, or small fries, or large coffee, small, medium, large, or extra large. Within those 4 categories, that's just the buildings of the bridges which we have to build. For myself, to build bridges with you, the 99% of the population, the neurotypicals. I don't have antagonistic feelings or resentful feelings vis-a-vis the neurotypical population. Sometimes it's gonna be more difficult, but we're able to do it. And it's friends with benefits only, or pledge your legions to our family, support the dream. My dream, for me, for you, for us, coast to coast, ocean to ocean, for the North American Collective, to build those 4. And it's halftime. Indianapolis 10, Colts 10, Saints 6. So 10 minus 6, that's 4 points. Indianapolis, halftime by 4 points only. So low scoring, 16 points. I like the Super Bowl 53 is one of my top 5 favorites, although my 49ers did not play into that one. That was Tom Brady winning with the Patriots for the last time, his 6th ring. It ended 13-3, 13-3. 13-3. Purdy with Purdy, we Empire Strike Back. We're going to win Super Bowl 61, 62, and 63, 3 in a row, just watch. Purdy was injured. We had a lot of injuries going into the game against the Seahawks, Although it's a big loss, 41-6. It's 41 minus 6, that's by 35 points, So it's quite a considerable margin of calculate the mathematics behind that. So yeah, that's what it is with that, and that's how we gotta get that rock and rolling, always for the truckers, the bakers, the butchers, the nurses, the truckers now on the road, stay safe, prudent, We got that ongoing snow removal operations going on. That's what's going on there. Are they trying to figure out if it's a return, or if it's a fumble recovery, or if it's the opposite team? They're just clustered there. And yeah, I got rules, regulations, football, huh? So I just started 3rd quarter, just like 1 second in, and there's something which kind of occurred, and What are you gonna? Okay, so he got kicked. He got kicked right in. It's not clear. So he didn't go that far. The player jumped. It missed catching it. Number 81 missed catching it. See, this is what's happening now. And then who did it? Who recovered it? Right in the kick, right at the second half, beginning of the second half, and I guess the referee also gets in there, tries to see what's going on, tries to see what's going on, but recovered, and I guess he got recovered the ball. Offensive field for 20. Wow, it's quite interesting. So, yeah, yeah, football, eh? Different rules, regulations. You lose the ball if you there's that rare rule, I guess. He jumped on it because maybe he touched it. The other New Orleans was able, although they kicked. Was it really an onside kick? What was going on? It was quite something. You check it for yourself. If you like football gridiron, let's discuss it. And yeah, that's a rule which is not often applied. It's not often that it happens. And New Orleans is down by 4 points. They got the ball. They kicked. They had the third period, beginning of the second half, and they were able to retrieve it because the offensive player jumped, but you had to jump a certain way, and the ball has to be. Yeah, there's rules, eh? Number 9, breeze. What a breeze! Right in the hands, right by the line, just a yard short. Looks like a yard short. Number 19 did a great catch, though. Kind of looked like a great catch, and working out these books, I said I'm gonna improvise, try to get that brain and muscle and brains, Gotta get a little of each, And no, not all Aspies are supercomputer geniuses, are good at computer science, but yes, disproportionately about one fifth, which is about 20%. So it's disproportionate compared to the neurotypical population, of which you are the vast majority of the 99% of the population. You are neurotypical, so compared to us, less than 1%. But population about 1 to 4% compared to us, 20%. So there is a mathematical statistical disproportionality there to be analyzed. But yes, it's a mathematical statistical disproportionality, but not all. 20% is 1 out of 5. So in a parallel life, I design, build supercomputers, microchips, ICBM rockets, and it is the year of darkness ending February 2030. In the year of darkness 2030, I build satellites, supercomputers, microchips, antennas, and sats, micro satellites, and ICBM rockets, and supercomputers, and microchips, and smartphones. And we got to get the Imperial smartphone for the citizens because we're going to fuse for only citizens. We're going to have to, of course, if people have been living in Canada, United States for the past 7 years, we have to accord some citizenship. That'll be best, to give the concordiate for the citizenship, and gotta get it for the drills. Let's see what's going on. That's gonna go get it for the left and the right, and number 96 pushes a little bit with the left arms and the right arms, and then he gets some yards. And you play defense, offense, but us, Draconis, aka Imperial Integrated SSD, which are gonna fuse compromittently as the Great Imperial Defensive Complex SSD. And I'm going to be doing a discourse on Greenland soon and China soon, maybe tomorrow in the coming days. Always open for commission and commission works and live streaming, if you will. Here in Hawk Island, Montreal, we're going to establish co-equivalency, co-parallel with the Pentagon, the total SSD complex in the coming days, weeks, and months, as we're going to meet the top Mall Royal for the banquet. Let's start in mid-February and 19th of March. And I'm going to propose for the third time, special marriage. If I get a yes, I got 2 no's. March 19 is the deadline for me to propose a third time. March 19. March 19, maybe on March 19 for that 93 Thelema, bury me with Papa Crawley up in New Jersey, That's going to be maybe a yes. And special type of marriage, I guess, because I'm part of the LGBTQ community, androgynous, pansexual, maybe CUCK, greatest cuckold in the universe, I guess. Sometimes, sometimes more than other times, Friends with benefits if you're 18 plus. Love that BDSM switch. Love that BDSM switch. Don't waste my time. I won't waste yours. What for? My rent's paid, electricity bills paid, got food and coffee. We got work to do. We got potholes to fill. We got bridges to build. We got infrastructure to rebuild. We got North American inner urban cities, aka ghettos, to rebuild together. We got many of our brothers and sisters who unfortunately lost their freedom. I got freedom tatted up here. See, that's the word freedom. Freedom. And supposedly I got this in New York in 2005. Freedom, FREEDOM. Freedom, freedom, freedom. Guess you got a little bit of a tear there. I guess my own sacrifice for freedom, or my brother or sister. You know, it's our brothers and sisters' freedom is sacrosanct. It's new under the sun, Solomon, and we gotta ensure it and defend it, and the Dragon Army will. And don't be so selfish, billionaires. Support the dream. Bill Gates, Scorpio brother Bill Gates, and Flock Safety Palantir. We have to, of course, establish the total SSD plateau integrated with all citizens for the new 911 Dragon Total Integrated Police Servicing. Of course, we're going to have to establish everywhere webcams for Flock Safety, public-private partnership, and Dragon Nets, and we're gonna of course mass finance food security, fitness, and we're gonna establish via the DRT, the debt fusion theory, which we're gonna create the UE and fuse a central bank into the Imperial Central Bank of the 63 by fusing Canada and the United States. We're gonna concord, of course, thereafter. We're gonna mass finance citizens' fitness. We open up the hotels and motels, and then 4 times a year times 4 times 4, that's 16 days a year for every season, every equinox and spring. Once every citizen who's 16 and over, just the eligibility, regardless of all other matters. You have to be 16 and over. We're going to credit tourist activities because me, when I crossed Canada in 2017 with my anonymous friend, in August, I went to BC, British Columbia. And then, of course, in September, I went to Halifax, Nova Scotia by train. In September, we went 25 hours and 44 minutes. I got the ticket still. It's been more than 8. It's been 8 years now. 8 years and some months. 2017 summer. I got the tickets. I'm auctioning them for $1 million bus. 2.5 days by bus from Montreal to Vancouver, BC. So that was the event that got me out of depression. I said so many things to see, to do here across North America, across the North American Collective, and of course, I started working out, training, exercising. I lost between 80 and 93 pounds. I lost a lot of weight between 80 and 93 pounds, and I got out of depression, and I made friends, lost friends, had a lot of jobs, had a lot of employments, but with autism, with HFA, high functioning autism, Asperger's, it's has been problematic to maintain long-term friendships and maintain long-term employments, because I had many, but sometimes 4 days, 4 months, 4 weeks, 3.5 days. It's not easy for Aspies. It's the unemployment level for Aspies is at 80%, and we're gonna have to seriously get serious about that. And that's why we have to mass finance fitness, and consequently, maybe not maybe, but yes, with all these networks that we have for total surveillance and total service and total defense, SSD complex, we're gonna mass finance citizens, see if they can, take a walk for an hour, take a march, and document it in all citizen act- activities, and with public registries and imperial social credit score. We're going to create some UEs. The UE, Universal Exchange Unit, is the imperial currency, imperial dollar, which we're going to create vis-a-vis. And after we implement the DRT across Canada, United States, join both complex, and we're going to mass finance fitness, mass finance dancing events, mass finance regular physical activity, regular volunteering. This is all part of the great dream for the North American Collective, because we constitute a civilizational complex, the dancing goddess and the dragon kingdom. We have a lot of work to do. Consequently, all the appellations, of course, of all willingly loving to support the dream in any way, shape, capacity by volunteering, printing pamphlets, and distributing the ideas and the theories of the transcripts, and pledge your allegiance, legions to our family. For the protocol, the pledge your allegiance, legions to our family, for today and for tomorrow, with great hope, and survive myself and my brothers and sisters, and we went through COVID 2020 right here in this room of St. Temple. Wow, I was hard hit by COVID. I thought I was going to die. In many ways, I did die. Nothing that I will to go back to, being reborn, and that rebirth, to blood, sweat, and tears. We've been living here. I used to live in that moldy place. I didn't even have it was like a prison cell. I always say it was like a prison cell. It wasn't officially a prison cell, but it was like a prison cell. It was so moldy, lots of mold. Maybe mold caused retrograde amnesia and personal memory loss, because memory loss of personal life events is not stored in the same part of the brain as skills, mathematical skills and linguistic knowledge and the like. So I might have some skills that I don't even know how I learned them, or mathematics. Sometimes I do math and I can't remember high school. High school. Supposedly I went to college. I dropped out. The Aspiesque, equal HFA on the spectrum. There's a high dropout rate, high unemployment rate, very high, and very high suicidal and depression rates, way higher, 7, 8, 9 times higher than the neurotypicals. And unemployment is 11 times. It's so disproportionate. It's awful. But a lot of progress has been made about what Asperger's is and what is not. It's not a disease. It's not a. That's why I don't use the word symptoms or characteristics. So, but it's just learning the certain social unwritten rules can be difficult, right? When to know, for example, personal distance, and we tend to repeat sometimes words and phrases, have echolalia, and we have these counterpositions where we are good at some things, but we're very not good at some other things, and sometimes we're ourselves very direct and straightforward. Not that we mean to offend or be offensive or abrasive or rude. It's just sometimes we're just very direct, and that's just the way we operate. But we have compassion and empathy, usually by more action based than verbal consolation. It's more action based, right? Than verbal consolation, And it takes some time, some patience to understand it. And if you dismiss it in a more superficial manner, then of course you're going to be a more ignorant view of Asperger's and not HFA, high functioning autism, and you're gonna just think it's a disease and it's an abnormality. It's just that the way our brains work is different from the 99% of the population. There's number 44 again. What a run! So it's not evil, it's not bad, it's not a disease. It's yes, in parentheses, there's the double dedie. In some ways, it's a disorder and disability or less ability, but in that parentheses, another parentheses is counterpoised, and that's the special skills. And usually, those special skills can be mathematics, some computer science, mathematics, above average mathematical capabilities, mathematical skills, and above average mathematical skills counterpoint with above average mathematical skills and above average verbal intelligence. And we can excel at our special interests, which can be history, mathematics, science, physics, architecture, cars. An Aspie can know everything there is to know about car models since the T4 Ford, meets geopolitics. And from what it seems, my documents, that geopolitics was since my at least for at least past 22 years. I don't remember before 2014, late 2013, but because I have a document from 2003 when I graduated high school, I had a reference letter. Supposedly I wanted to go to Kingston Military College. So suspect because I wanted to go to Kingston Military College, that geopolitics was an integral part of my special interest as it is today, as it has been for years and years and years, as you can see by yourself, checking and analyzing hundreds of the transcripts of my videos, especially in the past 3.5 years during COVID, and especially as it relates to my geopolitical analysis or such lectures, discourses as The Privilege of Civilization, which of course has lots of geopolitics in it, because that was my thesis back in 2023. Is going to be February, March is going to be 3 years since my 4-part lecture series called The Privilege of Civilization. Because civilization is a privilege, right? Having electricity is a privilege, having the runways, having the highways, having the running water, those are encompassed in the privileges of civilization, which we have, of course, the governmental structures and the political structure to govern them is a space for our interactions with nature and the wilderness. I guess I spent my own time in the wilderness, and that was my thesis back in 2023, which I dialogued, and of course I converse consistently about, or I mention it, but I don't wish too much about it. Another one was Americain, Unwilling Empire. That was from 2020. I was earlier. I think that kind of dates 2017, 2018 in initial forms, and Coffee with Dragon, hundreds of my workout training program system videos thereof, and consequently all the other majorities of the plurality of the interactions, of course, which are concordant to all my work, as it manifests as the Dancing Goddess and the Dragon Kingdom, which is fundamentally a call for a public-private partnership across the North American Collective. Which we are an emergent civilizational complex that is new, basically, from other civilizations, which have 1,000-year-old histories. Although we're not totally divorced from Western civilization, we are distinct. So the North American collective civilization, the complex of North American civilization, is an emergent one, and we have been emergent since around the end of the Second World War. We're not divorced from Western civilization, but we have distinctions, and we're still emerging. And the solidification of this union of the civilizational complex of the free world and the new world, North American Canadian Imperial Republic, which are going to constitute by implementing the DRT, is going to launch us towards a new geopolitical reality of a new world order, where we're going to have the Imperial American Canadian Empire with a fusion into the Imperial United States of America together, joint fused. We're going to establish a total BDD, benevolent dominance and dominion of the world. Coast to coast, ocean to ocean, BDD. And of course, that's part of the bipolar, not to be confused with a psychiatric condition here. The psychological condition has nothing to do with what I'm about to discourse now. The bipolar geopolitical strategies for total BDD, benevolent dominance and dominion of the North American Concordat, is of course it supplements all the supplementations. So we have to of course divulge ourselves for total SSD, for security, service, and defense only, as we're going to constitute and formulate, create the two complementary covenant and cooperative PPP, public-private partnership institutions, the International Integrated SSD Legion, Security, Service, and Defense, aka the Dragon Army, with the Dancing Goddess Army, aka the Imperial Integrated Dance League. Consequently, and of course, in the prudence where we're going to have to complement ourselves to be now in the relationships of all the relationships where we're going to establish thereof, and we're going to formulate the imperial foreign policy thereafter. After we implement the DRT first and foremost, we got to focus on the DRT first and foremost, and then move step by step after that for the fusion of the RCMP and the FBI, consequently, and the other programs such as, of course, the doing the great census in Canada, United States. So now I'm gonna just focus on the DRT, debt refusion tears. I watch. It's 1713. 1713. 1713. 1713. Indianapolis. 4 minutes left in the third. 17 minus 13, that's 4. Only by 4 they're leading. There's number 9. With a whooper. Whopper, whooper, whooper, whopper. So I'm going to explain the DRT now. So the debt refusion theory stands for DRT. We have to implement it across the North American collective. The DRT includes in it MIT, monetary integration theory. Monetary integration theory is, of course, the financial theory which was implemented in the European Union in the 90s. Many European nation states, countries, they of course no longer have their national central banks. They have a multinational central banks which serve, of course, as a national bank for all, was a central bank for all different nation states. The ECB, the European Central Bank, serves, of course, as a bank of banks in many ways. Of course, in the appellatives, of course, that it serves for a bank of bank, and that is, of course, where it serves, of course, to be now. And of course, that domain is, of course, where we have ourselves to implement the DRT, the debt refusion theory, for the creation of the UE, the Universal Exchange Unit. That is, of course, in the parameters of where we are now to be congregated of about, and that's what we have to get doing, of course, as much as we can. It's an emergency, and we have to implement the DRT. It will require a mass public-private partnership by Scorpio Brothers, Citizen Bill Gates, and of course all the other institutions and organizations such as BlackRock and Blackstone and RBC, Royal Bank of Canada, and of course all public and private institutions and banks, Canada, United States join. So the DRT stands for D debt, R refusion, T theory. It includes monetary integration theory, which again is the financial theory which was implemented in the European Union in the 90s. I believe the 21 or 22 nation states share the common central bank known as the ECB, and Bulgaria is the country who just joined. So that's what we're going to do with Canada, United States first and foremost, but it can be expanded. Mexico, Haiti, Dominican Republic, and other countries of the North American Collective. The country of the North American Collective also includes Cuba, but Cuba is a paradox because they maintain their socialist, communist, one-party, socialist system, Cuba. So now I'm going to explain the DRT because we have to implement it fundamentally first and foremost Canada and the United States, because much of our population is in a financially precarious situation due to the over indebtedness and the overburden, of course, of the financial system which we have for the vast majority of citizens, myself included. I have a $10,000 debt to the RBC, to the Royal Bank of Canada. I have a $10,000 debt to the RBC, to the Royal Bank of Canada. And of course, that categorically, of course, prepositions ourselves in the domain where we have now to be coalesced in all the domains and all the relations which we're gonna focus on after we implement the DRT, the debt refusion theory. Paradoxically, I gotta give a shout out because I received a book as a gift in holidays, December 2018 for the holidays, and I gotta give a third, one third, or a quarter, basically about 25% credit to an acquaintance who gifted me a book. It was semi-conspiratorial. Now, it wasn't officially a conspiracy book, all of it, but it had semi-conspiratorial views, but it had really much relevant information to whatever. It had relative financial information. It relates to the world financial system and past ancient Egyptian financial banking system of the ancient Egypt, ancient Rome, ancient Babylon, ancient Sumeria, ancient China, and of course it also explained the British imperial system and the Dutch East India, and it's focused a lot of chapters on the great financial crises which lasted from about 2007. It started around 2007 July and lasted around 2010. Some even have, there's still reverberations of that crisis today in today's world. But so for some reason it correlated much of the great financial crisis to the Chinese underworld. Now, I'm not an expert on the mafia of the underworld of transnational criminal syndicates because of geopolitics. Since I'm an independent geopolitical honest interest, I do have to take into account in a vast proportion the transnational criminal elements. And of course, they have been growing in Canada in the past 10 years, that is for sure. Since, gotta salute the RCMP in 2024, October 25th, they dismantled their Mountie is dismantled, which is the co-equivalent of the FBI, the biggest ever drug super lab, and I get goosebumps whenever I discuss it because in that super lab there was enough fentanyl to kill the population of Canada twice over. So, anyways, back to the book. Because of the surname of this particular individual who had worked in finance, supposedly he had created a covert financial instrument, which was part and motive of the great financial crises, and because he had worked in Canadian and U.S. finance in Vancouver, and just before the crises, like in February, March 2007, as the book mentioned, he had moved back to Hong Kong, and because of his surname, it was Lee. Now, I don't know Li if it's related to the Chinese Hong Kong underworld somehow. The surname, if it's related to the founders and many of the chiefs, leaders, bosses of the Chinese criminal underworld, are sometimes share this common surname, Li, L-I, not L-E-E, but L-I. L like in liberty and I as in instrument. Two letters, not L-E-E. So that was a controversial spread. Again, I'm not, maybe the chiefs of the RCMP and the FBI will know more that, these surnames of the leaders of the Chinese underworld do have this correlation, and the foundations are by this clan. It linked with a clan of criminal underworld clans in Hong Kong, China, and China and Hong Kong. So I don't know about that, but whatever part of it was like conspiratorial. I'm not a big believer in conspiracy theories, but it did discuss real financial events and real financial events crises, such as the tulips crises and other crises, and of course it discussed central banking and interest rates and everything to do with finance and banking. So one quarter, about 25% of the DRT, I credit to that book. I read it several times, actually. I analyzed it. I kind of studied it. I wrote on it so much, even while taking baths, that it got ruined. And like 3.5 years ago, I had to throw it away during COVID. And I got it as a gift. So I guess because at one point I was taking a bath and I was writing on it, and I kind of fell into the water, So it got damaged, too damaged for me to preserve it. But it was a great gift. So paradoxically, it comes from this great acquaintance, and it was well written. It's just the conspiracy theories. I'm not too big on that. So, anyways, back to the DRT, debt refusion theory. It includes monetary integration theory, which is the financial theory, which was implemented in the European Union. So we're going to take all the public and the private debt, my $10,000 to the RBC, yours coast to coast, ocean to ocean, all the public private debt of Canada. We're going to convert all the public private debt of Canada into US dollars. We're going to add all the public private debt of Canada converted into US dollars. We're going to add it with the public private debt of the United States. That money plus the money in circulation is going to be the initial money supply for a new central bank, the Imperial Central Bank, which we're going to issue the UE, the new currency U dot universal E dot exchange, UE. That's what money fundamentally is, a unit of exchange. U, universal, E, exchange, unit, UE, U dot, E dot, U dot, universal exchange unit. That is what money fundamentally is. That's why it requires my astrological brother Scorpio, Bill Gates, all institutions and organizations to create the UE, fundamentally the universal exchange unit. Of course, that is what it is going to be, of course, protruded in that. And of course, the universal exchange unit is going to be created as the imperial dollar, the imperial dollar, the UE, universal exchange unit, aka the imperial dollar, with implementing the DRT and creating this fusion of Bank of Canada and the Federal Reserve into the Imperial Central Bank, which we're going to issue the imperial dollar and the UE. We're going to set an interest rate level of 10% maximum. After we implement the DRT, we're not going to be able to see more than 10% charged on interest. It's going to be a total refusion, and of course, sort of a revolutionary one is a mass public-private partnership. The DRT is going to enable us to launch a mass public-private partnership to rebuild the infrastructure, the bridges, the roads, the ghettos, the North American inner urban cities. We're going to mass finance fitness as well, and we're going to mass finance imperial tourism. We're going to fuse the FBI and the RCMP into the IPS, Imperial Police Service, based on my total 911 Dragon Army total protocols for total security, total safety, total defense, of course, in concordant with what we're going to have to be doing with that. And that's going to be just what we're going to have to correlate all our capabilities, instrumentalities thereof for the mass rebuilding of also of the Imperial People's Coliseum on the Canadian-US border and the Forgotten Goddess Temple. And of course, that is what we're going to have to do, of course, together, as we're going to, of course, be diffused and implemented. If you hear the sirens, please turn your heads left and right. Do the Imperial's full circle, Imperial security protocols. If you hear the sirens of the police, sirens of the firefighters, sirens of the ambulances, sure everybody's safe. And somebody, I don't like violence at all. I don't like violence. I am hyper vigilant, I guess, because of my PTSD and having survived a vicious surprise attack. I am hyper vigilant. I survived a vicious surprise attack, and hyper vigilance survived that vicious surprise attack years and years ago. Going to keep updating when that was, when I went to the emergency room department at the Jewish General Hospital. But I don't like violence, and I am hyper vigilant, and is that PTSD, but I healed much, and I guess we'll have a little trauma and more or less scars, but the powerful, beautiful thing is the DRT coming out of it, the debt refusion theory. I moved here with nothing. I actually survived. Last year, I survived with less than 11,000 Canadian, and I had many jobs. Maintaining them has been problematic. Paradoxically, the DRT, debt refusion theory, for the creation of the UE, Universal Exchange Unit, is why we have to do complementary and in all the relative aspects what we have now to be the dimensional aspects of this mass public-private partnership, which is going to enable us to do great things together, to mass finance also the Imperial Criminal Rehabilitation Act, our brothers and sisters, who lost their liberty. We're going to do mass rehabilitation, mass build social housing, social buildings, rebuild the bridges, the potholes, the roads, the highways. We're going to rebuild the highways, the roads, mass building of the roads, the highways, and in complementary, we're going to have, of course, to be together in all the infusion, and we're going to complementary establish the two complementary covenant and cooperative institutions, the Dragon Army, aka Imperial Integrated SSD Legion, Security Service and Defense, Dragon Army Security Service and Defense for total security, total defense, coast to coast, ocean to ocean, with the Dancing Goddess Army for environmental education and action, and integrated with all existing institutions and organizations which exist now. Pledge your legions to our family. 1716, fourth period, 9 minutes and 13 seconds. The clock is ticking. 9:11, 9:10, 9:09, 17 to 16. Look at that. By 1 point. So now there's under pressure, And we have 1 point to go, and you got some passing done, and then you got some more passing, and what a rocket, eh? ICBM rocket type of laser, like launching on that, and then Jennings getting the number 23 to get them down. But that's what it was. And see, it's 17-16. 17-16. It's it's a good football, good Super Bowl. This is okay, one of my top 10, I guess. But whoa, what a pass! It was 7th of February 2010 to number 25. Bush. I wonder, where was I? What was I doing, eh? Maybe in that moldy place. Junkie, maybe I was a junkie on drugs, on dope, because maybe that's sometimes memory loss comes because of that, sometimes because of trauma, maybe the mold. I don't know if before 2014, before January, February, which is a long time ago, 12 years ago. Sometimes I think that maybe I was a junkie, maybe I was doing drugs and hard drugs and drinking alcohol. And I moved here, I rehabilitated, I crossed Canada coast to coast, I started working out. I don't drink much. Even if I drink a bit, it's a glass of wine, two wines, three glasses of wine, and I'm snoring. Maximum three glasses of wine. And that's it for me after all that. Just a little bit of somebody, I got a little bit of cognac for the holidays, and I drank a little bit. To be honest, I actually found the bottle. It was probably somebody dropped it when it was holiday shopping. I found it deep in the snow. You know, when the snow plows, it was deep in the snow. I saw a little bit of something flashing. I said, "What is that in the snow?" I keep digging. I see more. I kept digging. I said, "Oh my gosh, it's a bottle." I said, "Oh no!" First, I thought it was pee. I said, "No, somebody peed in this." And then I said, "No, but it looks like it's not open." I guess somebody dropped it, and the snow plow, because it was during snowstorm, as I was marching to the mountain and back, and it was in the snow, in the snow. So I checked, and the seal was still on. So I said, I'm not going to leave it there, because if they pass again the snow machines the next day, they would have broken the glass, and it would have been even for security. Who knows who it belonged to, the bottle initially? Maybe somebody in the neighborhood. It was not that far away. Well, my neighborhood is 90,000 people, so and it's a few streets away, but so it could have been, to say the perimeter, it could have been one out of 25,000, but it's like a small city, right? But yeah, so I still got some leftover cognac, but if I drink a bit, then I don't drink much. But I don't know if I was before 2014, if I was doing drugs or junkie. Maybe February 7, 2010, I was doped up, high up, and drunk, and right, that's why retrograde amnesia. I know sometimes memory comes back, but it could be trauma, combination of things. But that doesn't affect other skills. Mathematical skills, linguistic skills. Those are not. They're not registered on the same brain as personal memory. So basically, I have trouble remembering my life prior to 2014, January, February. It doesn't really matter. That's so long ago. It doesn't really matter. I know from information from journals. Journals. Lived on the South Shore. Graduated high school. I did graduate high school. I dropped out of college. I do have a high school diploma, so I did graduate high school. I just went to college, and I just dropped out of college. I wanted to go to Kingston, and that's basically I'm doing work every day for years and years and years, artistic work, intellectual work, and I had many jobs. I just due to my Asperger's, which it took me years and years and years to accept. Maybe I was a junkie. Maybe that's why I was attacked by surprise, because of my difference. Because Aspies, there's a tendency to us to be not too liked and bullied. 22 to 17. But there's more and more progress being made in relation to Aspies, just like it's been with my fellow, because I'm part of both. I'm part of the LGBTQ community, 50-50. I'm a mystic, and many past lives, many incarnations. I was born a man, a woman, a man. As a matter of fact, read George Patton, Through a Glass Darkly. George Patton believed in reincarnations. Just read George Patton, Through a Glass Darkly. Only he did not mention that he was my wife in a past life, and I was his, George Patton. Through a Glass Darkly, there he discusses his beliefs in reincarnations. Me from ancient Egypt as the priestess by the pyramids, to ancient Rome I was the priestess. Pythia, who orated the great retreat to Lycurgus, I was the priestess. Pythia, who orated the great Rithria to Lycurgus. So you get that 50-50 now, man, woman, woman, man. Rock and rolling 24/7 for the firefighters, butchers, bakers, the nurses, the daycare workers changing diapers, the plumbers, the electricians, those construction workers are going to need to build more skyscrapers. We're going to need to build the 44 mass building structures, maybe 11 in Greenland. To get a joint, I have protocols for alternative solutions to make a compromise, a collective compromise for the Greenland Security Service and Defense Plateau for the North American Integrated Collective with NATO, based on my total mobile defense theory, and of course to build, construct mass tunnel city structures in case of a thermonuclear war. But we got to get that Golden Dome bill, Canada, United States. We got to get rid of the border. We're going to implement the DRT, debt refusion theory. We're going to create the Universal Exchange Unit, the UE, because that's what money is. UE, aka the Imperial Dollar. We're going to do a census. If you haven't been convicted of 44 criminal convictions over the past 11 years, then we're going to do some imperial criminal rehabilitation protocols and actions. And of course, parallel to that, we're going to, of course, build the 44 mass tunnels in case of a thermonuclear war. And also, we're going to do a census and accord imperial citizenship of the new imperial American Canadian Empire by fusion into the 63 United States, United Imperial States, which is going to be the American Canadian Democratic Republic, the American Canadian Empire, the Dancing Goddess, and the Dragon Kingdom thereof, as a mass public-private partnership vision for the N.A.C.W.P to rock and roll it. North American Collective Workers Party, pledge your allegiance. Our family, create the IPS, Imperial Police Service, do a census, mobilize the institutions, organizations which exist to do the census and do a census, and then establish a parameter for total security, total service, total defense. And we have to know everything that's coming in, basically to the airports and the ports, because we got ocean to ocean, and we're gonna just fundamentally focus on making a deal with Mexico to see at the border, because that's the only border we need to be careful of. Is of course the Canadian and U.S. border that gotta go, and we gotta do the imperial passport, a common passport, as we're gonna fuse a common constitution, and of course we're gonna integrate into the new United States, the USS Imperial States. We're gonna mass finance security service, and do a mass public-private partnership. We're gonna mass finance tourism four times a year. Every citizen who's 16 and over is gonna be accorded who's 16 and over is gonna be accorded 4 days, 4 times a year. That's 4 times 4. That's 16. Tourist activities, of course, implemented, of course, in the tourist protocols, which we're going to have, of course, to do. And, of course, that is just the appellation where we're going to have, of course, to be the protocols involved in the doing of the protocols, implementing the protocols, the initiatives, and my theories. And we're going to mass finance across the 63 Imperial Tourism Ministry Department, which is going to establish a strong esprit de corps for everybody who's 16 and over, 4 days, 4 times a year, regardless of work, financial situation, or background on XYZ. Citizens of the empire, as we're going to accord after we do the census, to everybody who's been living here for the past 7 years and who has not been convicted of criminal convictions. We're going to accord criminal rehabilitation and citizenship. Everybody deserves sometimes third chances also. And we got to make this great compromise, the Democratic Republican compromise for the Imperium, and finance tourism, which was going to enable our mental health to increase, joy and happiness to all who are 16 and over, as we're going to finance 4 days, 4 times a year. It's basically 4 nights, everything included: food, housing, lodging, as a mass public-private partnership via the DRT and the creation of the UE. We're going to be able to do that with all hotels, motels, 4 nights, breakfast and lunch and dinner. Don't expect caviar, and good champagne. But me, I'm just going to take the 4 days. I'm going to actually take 8 days twice a year, or you can accumulate, take 16. Once you get to 44, you got to use them or lose them, or spring equinox, solstice, summer equinox, solstice, autumn equinox, solstice, and winter. We're going to have the categories, and of course, can't have everybody at the same time. It's going to have to be by allotment and the mathematical calculation of the population, and then first come, first serve. Or you're going to have to wait a week, or you're going to have to wait 2 weeks, or you're going to have to wait 3 weeks, or you're going to have to wait a month until you can take your 4 days. But you can take your 4 days, up to the next 3 months as the other season adds 4. So every every equinox, when spring begins, basically when summer begins, autumn begins, summer, every citizen who's 16 and over is going to be automatically credited those credits for tourism, or 4 nights in motels, hotels. You're gonna be is gonna be paid by the expense of the Imperium, the imperial expenses by the DRT, that implementing my debt refusion theory. We're gonna able to mass finance this public-private partnership to finance our brothers and sisters to go anywhere they want to go, from Quebec to California, California to Idaho, British Columbia to the Northwest Territories, to East Coast, West Coast, throughout the 63. The 63 or the 51 or the 61. 63 preferably 13 for Canada. It's just the original 13 plus 50. That's the beauty of the 63, the Imperium of the 63. And whoever wills to join us afterwards, Granddaddy Trump made a mistake to put those tariffs, but paradoxically, as Canadians, we have to understand what admission to the Union is, and basically in a formulation, in a semi fashion, myself is the acceptance, admission to the Union acceptance, but via this compromise of a mass public-private partnership and the implementation of my Trinity theories of the dream. Let's get in mid-February to March 19, start the banquet for the establishment of the Imperial Republic thereof. Consequently, it is a DRT and the mass public-private partnership, which we have to formulate, of course, in the integral aspects of all our complementarities, where we are now to be continuing this great mission, vision, and philosophies of this Imperium Republic, which we're going to have to constitute and build those mass imperial structures. The Imperial Citizens Imperial Coliseum, which is going to be 11 times bigger than the Super Dome, Caesar Superdome, and of course the other ones where we're going to have, of course, this mass complementary covenant and cooperative institutions, public-private partnership in nature, the Dragon Army, the North American, the integrated Imperial integrated SSD, S security, S service and defense only, security, service and defense, coast to coast, ocean to ocean, and implement the CIT, citizen integration theory, to formulate and put into practice the Trinities and integrate for security, service and defense, and rehabilitation and rejuvenation of our brothers and sisters, And this mass public-private partnership is going to require institutions and organizations, corporations as well. All corporations, all institutions. All corporations, all institutions. So I got great hope that my call is going to be heeded, and friends will benefit. So pledge your allegiance. Legions, volunteers needed for the dream. Volunteers for the dream. Get espoused and read hundreds of my transcripts. Study my transcripts for the past 3.5 years, the DRT, debt refusion theory, the CIT, the DFT, and the dream, and now it's 30-17. Wow, in just 3.5 minutes, it went from 17 to 16. They scored 2 touchdowns, New Orleans, in 3.5 minutes. It was 17 to 16, New Orleans, in 3.5 minutes with a turnover. They scored a turnover, and now it's on the clock in 3.5 minutes. It's 30-17. See, Super Bowl football in just 3.5 minutes. Wow, what a game! I guess. Hey, it's just 3 minutes and 12 seconds to go on the clock. Wow. 3 minutes to go on the clock. This was February 7th, 2010. February 7th, 2010. February 7th, 2010. Maybe February 7th, 2010, I was attacked by surprise again, by a black sword. I was drunk and piss junkie, maybe. Maybe, I don't know. This doesn't really matter. I do have plenty of scars, but maybe I was being banged up like a quarterback getting sacked, Maybe. Who knows? Maybe it's possible. It's very possible, likely. That doesn't really matter, Sometimes memory comes back or not. It's 31-17. I have a very good memory, but of the past 11 years, moving here I came with nothing here, 10 years ago. 11 years ago, I was still living in that moldy place. It was winter 2015, January 2015. I was still living there in that moldy place. I remember about 18 months living there, a year and a half, and just before January 2014, late 2013, and I was like, anyways, it's like blackouts, you know. Here I am, 19th of January, working out, training, exercising, did my laundry, paid my rent, paid my electricity bill, got these gloves red since 2018, 7 years ago. My anonymous friend gave me the greatest agenda I ever had for 2016 to begin. Got a right to go retrieve the archives from the Jewish General Hospital. Got to write everything that I'm doing to workout, train, exercise, geopolitics, workout, train, exercise, and always open for business and pleasure 24/7. Support the dream, the North American Collective Civilizational Complex, which we're going to have, of course, to constitute in the Appalachians where we are now. It's 31:17 with 3 minutes to go. That's 31 minus 17, 14. Indianapolis down by 14 points. Just 3.5 minutes, and they scored. They put 14 points on the board, eh? That's just about a 2 point, actually, 2 point arrows. So, 14 points. 15, actually, but. But I feel good now. I'm glad I took the initiative to work out. I was asked, should I work out, should I not? And then the dragon, because nobody's born a dragon, you become one. My HGA, Holy Guardian Angel, buried me with Papa Crawley up in New Jersey, threaded me up in my second home here in my home, Montreal, Hawk Island. Montreal, Mount Royal, HAWK, Hawk Island, Montreal. There's number 18. What a whopper. He goes to number 17, gets it in. He goes left, he goes right, he got some yards. Left to right, he got some yards. Left to right, he got some yards. Left to right. Rock and roll it every day. Get some yards, you know I say. Give some charity, don't pray. Oh yeah, I can rock and roll for hours. I just go into geopolitical Aspiesque trances. Well, they're not really trances, right? Because they're special interests. So I can be super focused, super intense, super concentrated when I work out, train, exercise, when I study or analyze or meditate on geopolitics, or when I rock and roll. Sometimes I just flow, eh? Yeah, the trinity of special interests. And it's Adrian, Hannah, Dragon, androgynous, pansexual, Aspie, artist, athlete, philosopher. Always for the firefighters, butchers, bakers, nurses, doctors, truckers on the road across Canada, United States. The butchers are brothers and sisters in uniform. Ain't nobody perfect, not me and you. I sing that rock and roll for the boys and girls in blue, as I sing that rock and roll for my brothers and sisters who take their second chances, because I believe in second, even third chances. I got mine to do that intervention to save us from a terrorist attack back in 2016, which I did. Perhaps save hundreds of lives. Maybe that's what I was saved, and I live with my scar. I'm not perfect. I increase in acts of goodness and kindness, and I'm pretty joyous now today. Financially stressed, but I got trillions of kisses corrected from the goddess. Trillions. Heard that correct? Trillions of kisses and trillions of marching steps and billions of rock and roll songs. And my holy dream, the Trinity of TVs, my brothers and sisters who pledge your legions, thou our family. My brothers and sisters who pledge your legions, thou our family. Keep my name out of your mouth if it's not for a blessing, otherwise let it be pestilence. Hope you have an understanding, and we're gonna get some of that rock and roll, and we're gonna rebuild, and we're gonna redo, and together we win. Pledge your legions for the states which are gonna fuse. Canada, United States is gonna be one for all for one, and also the Dragon Army is gonna serve as the emergency response integrated for SSD, security, service, and defense, and emergency response, because we've got increasing wildfires, environmental factors, and it's going to take a mass public-private partnership. I'm not totally selfless. I don't pretend to be totally selfless and pretense. I love my wafers, and I got food. I got grapes. Thank you, my anonymous friend, for so big grapes. My favorite fruit is grapes, and there's going to be some of that good loving and good eating here. Got some bread, got some milk. I'm going to be actually having some milk and some bread, and we're going to finish this workout. Saying that gratitude, saluting the saluting the firefighters, the butchers, the bakers, auctioning all these books. This agenda actually is French and English. Birds of North America for $1 billion. And auctioning my clothes, my underwear, my socks, my shirt, $1 million each. The gloves, $1 million to give my anonymous friend half. Half of $1 million is 500,000. So after Dragon versus Trump on the Canadian-US border, anybody else in mid-February I should be ready. Anybody who wants to go in the rink with me, who's heavyweight, if I qualify for heavyweight, because I was 93.4 kilos, so I guess I qualify for that heavyweight in the rink. And starting mid-February, I'm open for that. A few million, give half to my anonymous friend. Who's the top contender? You let me know. Rock and roll, pledge your allegiance, legions.